Welcome to the Tech Simple podcast. Independent insights into the latest AV technologies, as well as tips and best practices to optimize AV solutions for modern workplace and learning environments. Here are your hosts, David and Jonathan from Konnectus AV Consulting.
Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Simple podcast. As always, I'm Jonathan Cuthbertson, and I'm joined by my good friend and colleague, David Allara. Welcome, David.
Hey, Jonathan. Thank you. And it's a great pleasure to be here on episode 18, the final episode of our first season of the podcast. It's pretty exciting. What do you think, mate?
Man, I can't believe how far we've come from our first couple of episodes. I've learned so much. We've had amazing guests throughout the year.
We have.
And it's been really good speaking with all of them. You know, next year we've got some great guests lined up as well, and we're starting the season 2 up in January. But before we get there, who are we speaking to today for our last episode of the year?
Well, it's a good episode. It's a cracker. We've got project management as the topic and a very experienced professional who's worked at companies like CBRE, APP, Pepper Property Group, and is also the founding director of Carmichael Tompkins Property Group, or CTPG for short. With over 20 years experience in project management, it's a great pleasure to welcome Mr. Kevin Tompkins. Welcome, Kevin.
Oh, thanks for having me on the show. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I know we've been trying to set this one up for a while, and it's great to finally have your expertise to talk project management, because I think that's just so important on workspace fit-out projects. Having a professional tell us what's important and what's not important, and how end clients can get much better outcomes by using professional project management companies such as yours and people in your team. I think that's going to be a great conversation today. So what I'd like to get started off with is keeping it on the AV theme. You know, it's very important to, at least what Jonathan and I have found, to have audio-visual considered as early as possible in a project. I mean, straight off the bat, is that something you would agree with?
100%. The way people are using office space these days has changed a lot in the last few years. The use of audio-visual equipment is a fundamental part of our everyday working life. It's part of the reason we go into the office. It helps us with collaboration. So making sure it's set up early in the project is fundamental. As you'd well know, the cost of AV can range from a couple of $100 a square metre to upwards of $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. You could go on forever depending on what you want to achieve. So making sure that the budget is set considering of AV early in the project is absolutely key. But also making sure that the impact upon the other aspects of the design are considered early so that they can be planned accordingly. Where TVs go on walls, how acoustics are set up, and then that end user experience, making sure that people can use the equipment easily. Again, absolutely fundamental to the success of an office fit out these days.
That's quite an interesting point you make there about the other services. AV is a bit unique in that way, isn't it? It kind of touches on so many other disciplines and has an impact, you know, from your interior design to your mechanical design or your lighting design and your acoustics design. And, you know, if it's not thought about early in the phase when those other disciplines are making their design decisions, to make a change to accommodate the AV can become very costly and also take a lot of time as well.
Absolutely. But it touches on every part of the office fit out itself. When you look at making sure you've got the right furniture selections, the height of screens on walls, the construction of a wall so it can suitably house a TV, the orientation of a room so that your light from the outside walls is coming in and hitting the space at the correct angle. We've all sort of sat in those meetings, and, you know, when we have a meeting with people online and virtual, it needs to be as authentic as it possibly can. So making sure you can see people's faces and actually see their body language and expression is really helpful. So that all needs to be set up when the rooms are being planned in the early phases.
Yeah, I guess there's nothing worse than getting an audio-visual, whether it be consultant or integrator, on board late once all the other design aspects have been done. And you kind of got a choice there. It's like, well, we can shoehorn the AV to suit what's already been built and designed, and that could compromise the end user experience for the use of the technology. Or we could give, I suppose, the proper user experience, what it's actually required, for the audio visual, and then make all those chops and changes to the built environment and the services, which is, extremely expensive, as we know, in both time and cost. And no one wants that, especially the end customer. But I guess it all comes down to the very beginning, which is getting a proper end user brief as early as possible, doesn't it? You've really got to understand the business, what are their pain points or their aspirational goals, same for the people, and then applying technology tools to, I guess, go hand in hand with what it is that they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I totally agree. And understanding what the user's expectations are early is really going to be helpful to drive that briefing process. We think back 10 years and it was commonplace for meetings to start 10 minutes late because the IT team needs to come in and set the table up and the desks and the screens and the like. And it was very clunky, and it's moved on from those days. That's really not acceptable to the majority of organizations that we're dealing with. People need to be able to walk into a room, push a button or not, and simply hook up their device and it works. It's got to be sort of first time every time. So that's the level that we're sort of working with now, which is much, much higher than it used to be. But also then understanding, are people going to want to interactively draw on the screen and manipulate drawings in the middle of the meeting? How do we make that happen? People going to be sitting? Do we kind of need to create a more active zone where, you can have the stand-up meetings with the AV as well, because people are talking with their body language and presenting sort of information, which is a bit more fluid. So making sure we understand how the business works is fundamental to the success of both the AV and the project itself.
Absolutely. And going back to cost, I mean, in all the years I've been doing AV, decades now, it just seems that if you're not au fait with what commercial AV costs, you're usually gobsmacked by the actual dollars when they get presented to you. It always seems to be undercooked. People just assume things are more in line with maybe residential type equipment, which you can go and get at JB Hi-Fi or Harvey Norman or what have you. But when you have robust commercial audio visual systems that are designed to work first time, every time, as you say, Kevin, I think budgeting for that is so important as early as possible to align expectations and not have to do any reworking of budget and the numbers and value engineering.
Absolutely, because what often happens is that the project is scoped up and budgeted, and then perhaps AV is bolted on as an afterthought. And then you have a problem because you may have sold all of these other dream scenarios of, you can have all of this accommodation, you can have this furniture, you can have this stone from Italy. You may have told the business they're getting all of these wonderful things, and then you have to sort of make some tough decisions at the end of the job to say, well, what are we sacrificing and what is perhaps the hierarchy of importance that we need to be considering? So we like to, early in the project, flush all of these things out and make sure that we've got a reasonable allocation for a audio-visual so that it can be considered along with all of the other facets of an office fit-out, so the clients can make informed decision around what their priorities are rather than the project team trying to cut quality or cut scope or sort of make some reduction at the end of the job to accommodate something that wasn't early considered.
Yeah, 100%. So how many years would you say of experience you have overall in managing workspace projects, Kevin?
Yeah, so I've been in Australia for almost 20 years now, and I had a few years over in the UK sort of working in this sort of area. So about 25 years all up.
25 years. Well, you are definitely the person to speak to when we sort of say, all right, what is the role of a professional project manager to ensure a successful project outcome? If we look at that, some of the points attached with that, like what's first thing sort of comes to mind when you want to answer that question?
I think we often liken ourselves to the conductor of an orchestra. So my mum, I don't think, still understands what exactly I do, because we don't design anything, we don't build anything. But essentially our role is to make sure everyone else can excel in their role in their specialist area. So like the director of a movie, someone who knows how a project comes together, they can see what is needed, and they can direct the traffic to make sure that the right thing is happening at the right time. And, people understand their specific roles and how they need to liaise with and coordinate with others. So essentially, we sort of set the tone for the project. There's the straightforward matters of we're controlling cost and time and quality and the like. But essentially, we see ourselves as being the person that allows everyone else to excel and deliver.
Okay, so bring the best out of the players in the project, so to speak, at the exact right times that they need to be excelling.
And making sure the right people are at the table to start with as well.
Right.
It's amazing how often that, there's specialist areas that are needed. And sometimes you just need to know who the right person is to do the right job.
Okay. Is that sort of part of, how you go about working with a client? You sort of obviously would have conversations pretty early. I mean, how early are we talking? Is it?
I think the most successful projects we're involved with are those where we're on board as early as the agreement for lease discussions and even heads of agreement.
Oh, right. Okay.
Essentially, that a commercial negotiation needs to happen to take an office space, but often that commercial negotiation needs to marry in with some fundamentals about how the project is going to be delivered. Understanding the condition of the premises that the landlord's going to hand you can hugely impact the cost and time associated with how you're going to fit your office out.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure that there's provisions for access, particularly in new buildings or buildings that are, being heavily refurbished at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding what quality looks like and making sure that process overlay sits aligned with a commercial outcome really can help a project be successful.
Okay. And so it's really at that time you're already starting to think of, all right, because you would, I'm sure you would have a Rolodex of many different people and companies that, are great at all different things. And you would probably start to be formulating already some ideas around who would be the best team or team plus bench to, start to talk to and bring in to have conversations with the client. Is that how you work?
Yeah, absolutely. While an architect or a services engineer, they may all look the same from the outside, there's different approaches and different methodologies that different businesses have. Certain businesses work with lawyers, certain businesses work well with financial services, and it's really down to the individuals within the organisation and that intertwining of relationships. It's funny, we spend 8 hours or more at work a day. We spend a lot of time with people and making sure that the personalities can get on well. And ultimately, we want everyone to enjoy the experience too. There's enough troubles and hard activities that we sort of have to get through in our lives. So trying to sort of make sure that we build a team that's going to gel, work well together and really collaborate is fundamental to sort of how enjoyable a project can be.
So you're almost acting as a matchmaker for the client and their partners,
Absolutely. We joke in the office that some days we're politicians, other days we're counsellors, and some days we have to be the strict school teachers and reprimand the children and make sure they're doing what they need to be doing. But it's funny. We do wear many hats in our job. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we're kind of doing that famous comparison of if I'm an end user here, would I do the project management myself in-house with some people that already have who might have a little bit of experience, or would I outsource it to a professional like yourself, Kevin, and your firm? What's the value add? I've clearly heard in that last 60 seconds there the fact that you know who's who and who would work well on this particular project, this type of project with this particular client. That's invaluable, isn't it?
I guess that's what we sort of say to potential clients is that you're not just buying my time, you're buying 25 years of experience of doing this specific role. Having a good PM on board who's experienced, they should be saving you multiples of what it costs you over the course of a project. And we can often demonstrate that to clients. I know recently we've worked on a project where we saved a client over $15 million. That's a huge amount of money compared to what the outlay is for our fee. So generally we would save every client money on a job. That's a baseline. essentially, we've probably done a similar process before. We know what to look out for. So we generally would be looking forward to avoid risks rather than managing risks, which can often be the case when inexperienced people are running projects. You're reacting. You're not proactively avoiding these issues. A seasoned PM is there to sort of help the client all the way through, whether it's preparing reports and managing upwards, making sure that approvals are dealt with in a timely manner, but also, I guess, helping the client see the bigger picture so that they can make informed decisions and understands the implications of their decisions. I mean, we don't make decisions, we don't approve things, we generally make recommendations to allow the client to, as I say, make informed decisions.
It's kind of similar to any consultant. Jonathan and I and our business Konnectus is experts in audio visual and technology. But I definitely see an area over the last 2-3 years, especially during COVID and post-COVID, where there's been a real problem with trying to get audiovisual equipment because of very long lead times and, trying to manage that. And also costs have gone up. It's been harder to get things. And I just think of that, I suppose, example, and then, multiply it out across an entire project, which you would have to manage. I mean, that's something that must have been and still is an everyday conversation. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The escalation of costs over the last 2 to 3 years I think it's been surprising to everyone, 20 to 30% across the board over the last 2 or 3 years. It has a huge impact. And if your finger isn't on the pulse and if you're not factoring that into the early stages of your project, you're going to come unstuck and you're going to have an issue where you've wasted money on something you can't afford. So I think having that market knowledge, speaking to quantity surveyors and builders every day about, how's supply chain going these days? Is it easing off? What are you seeing with regards to, labour costs and the impacts that some government policies would have on that still is ongoing? It's having a finger on the pulse and giving your clients the benefit of that advice, particularly in those early planning phases. We've been able to avoid a few challenging projects.
Yeah, I guess the key word there is knowledge and applying that knowledge to be proactive, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's where you're able to, I guess, save millions of dollars on projects, not to mention time.
Correct. And really helping clients to manage their own business. So the whole piece around managing expectations, once you set an expectation for the business, it's really hard to claw back from that. So if we tell them that we're going to have their office fitted out in 6 months and we don't hit that time, it's not a great look for anyone. So making sure that we're sort of being cognizant of where those long lead time issues lie, how cost is still impacting projects and what it's likely to do, particularly where we have projects that are 2 or 3 years gestation. We have one now in Melbourne and we're trying to plan and forecast the budget for a cost that's going to happen in about 2-3 years' time. So there's a little bit of crystal balling that you need to do and making sure that we speak to 2 or 3 well-respected and experienced specialists in that area and then bringing that knowledge into the project it's really helpful.
Yeah, so critical. Absolutely. I'd like to now sort of turn the conversation to that famous, I don't know if it's dilemma or question or challenge, whatever you want to call it. As we've come off COVID, workspaces are more and more evolving into becoming something a little bit different, maybe a lot different to what they were prior to COVID. But there's that ever-present question, which we can't really avoid, and I guess companies are always asking, and clients are always asking, Kevin, what can we do to entice our staff to come back to the office? What do you think of that one?
Yeah, it's something that I guess gets discussed at every meeting we have with sort of every consultant.
Right.
We're lucky in that our people are staunch advocates of the workplace, and workplace is always going to have a place in our society. It's far too sort of ingrained in who we are and what we do that, there'll always be a place for the office. Essentially, for us, getting people back into the office was fairly easy because our people wanted to be here. We're collaborators, we're problem solvers, we work in teams. We needed to have that environment where we can come together to solve problems and make sure our projects were being managed accordingly. For us, making sure that the office is, I guess, somewhere people want to be. So, making sure it's giving them the right sort of spaces that they need to do their job. I think a lot of people are sort of saying now that, the office is the place for collaboration. You can do focused work at home. But I'm not entirely sure I always share that view. I always sort of look to the younger generation.
Yep.
Like we've got a lot of younger staff here that they kind of need that mentoring. It's not about sort of sitting down and having a half an hour discussion every day as to what you've got to do and how you're going to do it. It's listening to those 5-minute conversations that they're having on the phone with someone, or overhearing something that someone's got a problem on another job and perhaps I might know how to help them fix it. So it's really about those 100 instances a day where you can hear a 2-minute snippet of someone's conversation and think, well, there's either opportunity, there's risk, or there's someone that just needs a hand and you can help them sort of solve a problem. We were lucky in that we had that all through our careers, and the youngsters, they've sort of struggled at home for a while we were all, forcibly locked down. And I think just creating that environment where we can allow these guys to sort of have the benefits of what we had, then it's good fun as well. It's,
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit older, and I would 100% agree. I think that having that opportunity to even observe, like if you're the senior person and you're observing just casually what's going on, you might be able to give just a little bit of advice or encouragement, or what have you, which could really help a person. And if you don't see that person often enough, that's a shame to miss that.
Absolutely. And a lot of clients have taken the opportunity to refresh their premises while we've been away. And, I think we go back to what we're here to talk about. A lot of them have done AV upgrades. And that AV that's got, when they come back into the office, it's got to work. They've got to be able to use it. They've got to be able to get a room. They've got to be able to get a desk. We kind of want their team to be there. A lot of people are in the situation where they're working from home perhaps 2 or 3 days a week, and giving them an environment where they can check online to see who's coming in perhaps on the day that they want to come in, to make sure that they can, be with their team. They haven't just come all the way into the city just to sit on their own because everyone else is at home that day. So I think it's a real coordinated approach between the workplace being sort of fit for purpose of how we want to work now, giving the team the opportunity to sort of, make sure that the people they want to be with, they can be with, but also sort of, just making sure that when they are, giving up that time to make the commute, that there's a reason why.
Yeah, there's something that I can actually do that I can't achieve at home. There's either whether it's a technology aspect or whether it's a meeting people or a collaboration, or as you say, Kevin, just being around and being able to hear those conversations and have those impromptu kind of encounters.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
And that's an interesting point, when we talk about, new workspace projects today, are we thinking about also for the future and maybe gathering data on how spaces are being used so that we can make tweaks and adjustments? Are you seeing much of a demand or interest?
Absolutely, yeah. The clients that can actually not only look at how many people are coming through the door, but the clients that can actually have the data to understand what type of meeting rooms are being used and used sort of efficiently. Is everyone using the 2-person rooms or the 4-person rooms or the 8-person rooms? What type of accommodation has been successful? What do people want? We've seen some clients particularly sort of surprised that certain types of space just aren't being booked. That relates a bit more to a fully agile workplace. Just having the information to hand to say what's successful, what type of space is being used, what do people want, and then you can provide it and you look like a rock star. It's the place is buzzing, everyone's here, everyone has, the space they want to use when they need it, and just snowballs.
So that kind of data, I think we were briefly talking before, there's a lot of kind of upgrades of existing spaces, and you were talking a little bit about pilot spaces as well as an interim relocation. Is that where you kind of collect that data?
Well, a lot of the data it can be sort of put into an existing space, sort of monitoring utilization of certain desk settings, room booking systems and the like. That can be integrated as part of a fit out or done as a standalone activity. the pilot space has been very, very interesting. We often use it as a bit of a project manager's secret tool. If we've got a technology upgrade happening in a project, we'll try and carve off some of the space to create a pilot space where people can get trained on the new technology and how to use it in a safe environment with, help to hand. But it also helps us as the PM, while they're off working somewhere else, we'll get into the space that they have been working, and we can sort of often refurbish that while they're away in the pilot space, and they get to come back to their sort of regular neighbourhood, and it's all been sort of upgraded and refurbished while they were off learning new skills. So yeah, it's a very handy technique, the pilot space.
I suppose it could also be helpful with change management because, as we know, people, generally speaking, don't like change and will quickly gravitate to the way they've always worked and always done things because that's what they know. But if you do, I suppose, these pilots, as you say, or proof of concepts even, you can be bringing people along the journey. They can be trialing things, giving you feedback, and not be so surprised when maybe the full upgrade is done in the future.
Yeah, I agree. And it's about managing those expectations. A lot of the more successful projects we've been involved with, we'll sort of work hand in glove with the change manager. We'll be sort of feeding them information on program and giving them samples of furniture to go off and get tested and get feedback on, but also sort of helping, celebrate the successes and the milestones of a project, getting people to put the hard hats on and walk through the site and try and envisage where they're going to sit. It really just helps sort of create the fun around the journey as well.
Yeah.
Generate a little bit of excitement as well,
Absolutely. Yeah. And once sort of people know, when you, like say, you bring them along for the journey, they understand what you're trying to achieve, they'll put up with a few weeks of sort of discomfort in less than perhaps ideal accommodation because they can kind of see what's at the end of the tunnel and, like you say, generate excitement and, generate goodwill towards the project.
Awesome. Well, I think this has been an extremely valuable conversation, Kevin. It's certainly clear to me and hopefully to the listeners the value of an experienced project manager such as yourself and the members of your team. Just want to thank you, so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge. And it'd be great also to know what's the best place people can get in touch with you or find you.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Appreciate you inviting me along today. It's been great chatting with you both. And if anyone wants to talk to me further, probably best to come through our website. You can find me on there. That's at ctpg.com.au. Awesome.
And I assume you're on LinkedIn as well?
I am, absolutely. Yep, you'll find me on LinkedIn as well. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you both.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Tech Simple podcast. To like, share, or discover more episodes, head over to Spotify. If you'd like to talk to us about AV in your workplace or learning environment, book an initial discovery call with David or Jonathan at Konnectus.com.au. And remember,
Tech Simple!